It was breaking news Tuesday morning that Israel struck Qatar. I mean, we're going way off course now. Israel struck Qatar. And it was very interesting considering the fact that there are current negotiations or were current negotiations that were happening with Hamas, Qatar, and Israel, where Hamas leadership was meeting in Doha in Qatar. And it just seems kind of, I don't know, a coincidence that Israel decides to strike Qatar when these negotiations for a ceasefire are supposed to happen. Let's go ahead and get into it, folks. I called BS from the moment I heard this.
This is CNN Breaking News.
All right, we do have breaking news. We are getting reports of explosions in Doha, the capital of Qatar, and beginning to see pictures coming back from that capital city. And we are getting word that this was part of a targeted Israeli attack. Let's get right to CNN's Jeremy Diamond in Jerusalem with the very latest. Jeremy, what have you learned?
John, this is an absolutely extraordinary moment that we are witnessing right now. A very large plume of smoke above the Qatari capital of Doha, and paired with that, an Israeli military statement saying that they have, quote, conducted a precise strike targeting the senior leadership of the Hamas terrorist organization, end quote. I have just gotten off the phone with an Israeli official who confirmed to me that that statement is indeed about that very same blast in Doha, meaning that the Israeli military, not even Israel's intelligence service, but its military, actually conducted a strike in Qatar targeting Hamas's leadership.
Pause. And this right here was a big tell for me, ladies and gents. This part right here, when he said that it wasn't even Israel's intelligence, it was their military. A precise strike, which means they knew exactly where they were. And if they can make precise strikes on them, then imagine what they can do with their intelligence. Israeli intelligence can pick up any and every little thing, which means to tell you that when they are choosing to strike a building or a tent, they know that there's kids in that building. They can see what's there. This is what I've been trying to tell people for the longest time. And we have some of the soldiers have come out about this as well. Some American soldiers have also talked about this, that their intelligence is so superior that they can even look down on your shoe. If you're far away, they can tell if there's a crumb on your shoe. They know exactly who they're hitting. And they've been knowing, right? But it also told me something else. It tells me that, again, they knew that they were going to be there. They knew that they were going to be there because there were those negotiation talks that were supposed to be had. And then that also tells me that this was a setup. This was a trap. This is why when I first heard about these peace talks that were about to happen, this is why I didn't cover it. Because every time I hear about there's a ceasefire possibility, there's negotiation talks, it turns out to be just a farce. Because Israel is going to do what it wants to do. I also don't believe that the U.S. government even wants any type of negotiation either. I believe they're just telling that to the American people to get everybody to calm down. I fully believe, and I said this under the Biden administration, and I say it under the Trump administration, I fully believe that the U.S. government, regardless of political party that is in the White House, I believe that the U.S. government made a decision, and their decision is that they are going to back Israel all the way. Regardless, if Israel breaks international law, they are going to support them. Even if that means lying to you and telling you that they're working on peace negotiations, and behind the scenes, they've already decided to do something else. Public Enemy had a song a long time ago called Can't Trust It. And you shouldn't trust it. What you have to remember, what's said in front of the camera and what's said behind the scenes are two different things. Also, this is in violation of international law. Israel implemented a strike in Qatar. And another question you need to ask yourself, how is it that when Iran and Israel were going back and forth and they were striking each other, how is it that Qatar was able to shoot down missiles that Iran was sending, over like within their airspace? They were able to shoot those down. They were able to shoot down the drones, shoot down the missiles. But it just so happens that the day that Israel decides to strike in Qatar, air defense is down. Guys. Unfortunately, some people are falling for this. That's why I said everybody plays the fool. Let's continue.
And of course, the moment in time at which this is happening, amid this renewed push to negotiate a ceasefire and hostage release deal by the United States, President Trump putting a lot of political capital behind that. And now Israel seems to have targeted the very Hamas leadership that is in the midst of those negotiations. Doha, the Qatari capital, is where several senior Hamas leaders are currently based and have been based throughout much of this war in Gaza, namely Hamas's leader, Khalil al-Hayya. Khalil al-Hayya has been not only Hamas's leader in the wake of the killing of Yahya Sinwar, but he has also been the chief negotiator, engaged not only through the mediators, but also at times with U.S. officials in negotiations over the future of the war in Gaza, the future of the fate of the hostages being held inside the Gaza Strip throughout these nearly 2 years of war.
And this is why you need to watch independent media, because he's not going to tell you what I just told you, right? So he's here on CNN. They're not going to allow him to say, yeah, I just told you all these things about the negotiations that were supposed to take place today. And then all of a sudden, Israel strikes Qatar while these negotiations are supposed to take place. It almost seems like a trap. He's not going to tell you that. If he tried to tell you that, CNN will probably boot him off the air, and that would be the end of his job. But this is where, like, those of us who are viewers, we have to start using common sense. Because I think a lot of the things that Israel does, they do kind of put this out into the ether. I don't feel like these things are even done in the dark anymore. It's so obvious. That's how sloppy Israel has started to get. It's so obvious that they're just putting it all out there. It's like, oh, okay, let's just do this on the day there's negotiations. And that brings me to another point. The fact that Qatar's air defenses were down. The fact that Israel decided to strike during these negotiations in Doha, that leads me to believe that this was a coordinated effort between the U.S. government, Israel, and Qatar. I believe Qatar was a part of this too. Now I'll go into you a little bit more reasoning behind that, but let's continue here with the video a little bit.
We are also learning via Tal Shalev that the targets do indeed include Khalil al-Hayya, who I was just talking about, and another official by the name of Jabarin. It's unclear as of now what the results of this strike were, whether or not Hamas's leadership in Doha has been killed, who has been killed, whether any of them are injured. We simply do not know at this stage. But the reporting this hour, John, is sure to be an earthquake in this region, not only for the prospects of negotiating a ceasefire agreement to end the war in Gaza, to secure the release of the hostages, but also as it relates to Israel's relations with these Gulf countries. Although Israel does not have official formal diplomatic ties with Qatar, Qatar has been the key mediator in these ceasefire negotiations throughout the war. It has been a key partner in trying to reach some kind of an agreement here. And this will certainly damage those relations as well going forward.
I want to put a little more context.
Let me pause here because I'm going to give you a little bit of the history of Qatar and the U.S. as well. I know I was saying Qatar. I always want to say Qatar. It's Qatar. But I think we need to think outside the box here. Don't you think it's a little bit strange that they weren't able to shoot down those strikes, but they were able to shoot down the ones from Iran? Don't you think it's a little bit weird that their air defenses were just happened to be down that day? Qatar is basically another U.S. military base. They have the largest U.S. military base in the Middle East. You really believe that they wouldn't have been in the know with this, that they weren't in on this? Because I think they were in on this. I don't think this was just an Israel decision. I don't think this is just a Donald Trump administration decision. I think Qatar is in on this as well. I think the negotiation was never real to begin with. One of the things I noticed about this particular negotiation, it seemed as though it was kind of vague. It wasn't as detailed as other ceasefire negotiations prior to this one. So I was just kind of like, yeah, this seems pretty weird. Don't forget that Hamas leadership also said that this negotiation was basically for Israel and what they want, but it was still very vague. So this was just a setup. I really do feel like we were watching a movie, and you think you're going to meet one thing, but it's basically you're walking into your doom. Now, those Hamas officials were not killed, from what I understand. As of right now, they were not killed. Let's continue a little bit more, and then you're going to see what the press secretary, what they had to say, what Trump had to say, and what Israel had to say. And we're going to put all the pieces together.
Text around this, Jeremy, because this is an extraordinary event, and I mean that quite literally. I don't believe there is any precedent for an Israeli military attack on Qatar, at least not that I can remember, and I think the Israelis will say it's not on Qatar, but it certainly is in Qatar. It was an air attack which had targets inside the capital city. So that in and of itself, as you say, is something we just haven't seen. And also the targeting of Hamas leadership fits a pattern now that we have seen from Israel over the last, 18 months. The assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah inside Lebanon. Yahya Sinwar, the operational leader of Hamas inside Gaza itself. But now to go after the Hamas officials who openly operate inside Qatar, a very significant development. What might that mean for negotiations?
Listen, it was in the first days of the war that Israel's security establishment and its political leadership made very clear that at the end of the day, whether it would take months, whether it would take years, they would go after every single member of Hamas whom they ultimately deemed responsible for the horrific attack on Israel on October 7th, 2023. And we have watched them tick down that list over the course of nearly 2 years of war, both inside the Gaza Strip, where they killed Yahya Sinwar, who was Hamas's, the primary architect of that October 7th massacre, ultimately rose to become Hamas's overall leader, both inside and outside of the Gaza Strip, whether it was Ismail Haniyeh, whom the Israeli Mossad killed in a special operation inside the Iranian capital of Tehran, or when you were talking about Iranian proxies outside of Israel, like, as you said, the leader of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah. I mean, Israel has been going down its enemies list over the course of the last 2 years, and this certainly appears to be a continuation of those efforts, and also making clear from the Israeli side that they do not see a distinction between the political leaders of Hamas, the leaders of Hamas's political wing, and the leaders of Hamas's military wing. And this is yet another example of that, in a way that the Israelis are demonstrating that not only is no one outside of their reach, but that they will, go to any lengths, including striking inside of a country like Qatar, which has been a reliable mediator between the Israeli and the Palestinian side, that they will go and conduct these strikes. And again, just to focus on the
We'll stop him here because he reiterates himself quite a bit, but no longer a mediator now. No longer a mediator now. I want to go ahead and bring up this here from Max Blumenthal. This is interesting. This is what I want to tell you guys about. Max Blumenthal said 2 days ago, Trump issued a short proposal and warning designed to compel Hamas exiled leadership to gather in Doha. Hamas said at the time, it looks like Trump's proposal was written by the Israelis. When Hamas met today in Doha, U.S. air defenses in Qatar stood down. See what I was talking about? Israeli officials have told the Jerusalem Post that the U.S. greenlit the decapitation strike. The negotiations have reached their death knell as Israel moves towards its final solution in Gaza, and the Trump administration has once again shown its true face as a subsidiary of the Zionist regime. Let's go down here, and I just want to show you this one right here that he shared. Everybody read this with me. Israeli officials told the Post that the U.S. knew about the attack beforehand and gave it the green light. Doesn't that sound familiar, ladies and gentlemen? Didn't we hear this when Israel decided to strike Iran? That the U.S. gave the green light, of course. It's another thing, like I said before, you guys, Qatar has the largest U.S. military base in the Middle East. You guys really think that the U.S. government didn't give the thumbs up for this to happen before it happened? It goes on to say here, the U.S. Embassy in Doha has issued a shelter-in-place order for all U.S. citizens. Guys, they were all in on it. They were all in on it. So Donald Trump gave Israel the thumbs up, and I would not be surprised if Qatar was in on it as well. And some people are falling for this. And I got to tell you guys again, like the song, everybody plays the fool sometimes, right? I've been informed that this is not originally by Aaron Neville. It's originally by the main ingredient. So we've been told this, right? Everybody plays the fool sometimes. But I'm asking you, when it comes to foreign policy, not to do so. Here's another one that gives me pause. This is from First Blood. The Qatari air defenses were not activated. The U.S. air defenses were not activated. In other words, there is coordination. I really do believe Qatar was in on this. I don't think this was just Israel's decision. And I want you to hear what the press secretary said here about this strike.
Regarding the Israeli strike in Doha, how much time or how much of a heads up did the U.S. get, and does the president support the strike?
Sure. Well, I have a statement to read for all of you with respect to the Israeli strike in Doha, and here it is. This morning, the Trump administration was notified by the United States military that as Israel was attacking Hamas, which very unfortunately was located in a section of Doha, the capital of Qatar.
Pause. There is no very unfortunately, because it was all a part of the plan. Now, you see, they can't keep their story straight because she is making it seem as though, oh gosh, it was just unfortunate that it happened to be there. But Israel already told the Post that the president greenlit the operation. So it's unfortunate. They knew about it. This was a part of the plan. And I don't believe there was any real negotiation that was going to take place. They can't even get their story straight.
Unilaterally bombing inside Qatar, a sovereign nation and close ally of the United States that is working very hard and bravely taking risks with us to broker peace, does not advance Israel or America's goals. However, eliminating Hamas, who have profited off the misery of those living in Gaza, is a worthy goal. President Trump immediately directed Special Envoy Witkoff to inform the Qataris of the impending attack, which he did.
Pause. What did she just say? What did she just say?
However, eliminating Hamas, who have profited off the misery of those living in Gaza, is a worthy goal. President Trump immediately directed Special Envoy Witkoff to inform the Qataris of the impending attack.
Of the impending attack. Ding, 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 ding. So of course they did it with U.S. permission. So they knew it was coming. And I say this because Qatar right now is saying that they are no longer going to pursue negotiations with Israel after the strike. But I'm trying to explain to everybody is this is all a part of the theater. This is what they wanted you to believe. They wanted you to think that we were trying to have these negotiations and Israel just wouldn't behave. And out of nowhere, they decided to strike in Qatar. So now we can't trust Israel. So we're not going to choose to have any type of negotiations. It's theater. The script was already written. And it was crazy how many people were falling for this. And I was like, really, guys? Seems a little too neatly packaged, don't you think? They knew the attack was coming. And if they had a problem with the attack coming, why didn't they put up their air defenses? They can't wash their hands clean in this one either.
Which he did. The president views Qatar as a strong ally and friend of the United States and feels very badly about the location of this attack. President Trump wants all of the hostages in Gaza and the bodies of the dead released, and this war to end now. President Trump also spoke to Prime Minister Netanyahu after the attack. The Prime Minister told President Trump that he wants to make peace. And
imagine talking about making peace after you just decided to strike during a negotiation process when negotiation was supposed to happen. So I'm just here to, again, just shrug off the foolishness, right? They are telling you that he wants the hostages out. He wants to make peace. Well, there were supposed to be negotiations happening so that that could happen. So if they really wanted the hostages out, if they really cared so much about those hostages, as I've said before, they would have had serious negotiations and Israel wouldn't have broken the ceasefire multiple times. As I've told you, they don't really care about getting those damn hostages back. If that was your main goal, why would you try to sabotage a negotiation and issue a strike, an attack in Qatar when these negotiations are supposed to happen? And Caroline, she's just a puppet. She's no different than Karine Jean-Pierre. She's no different than Sarah Huckabee when they all stood up there behind that podium and they lied to cover the current administration. I'm sure she'll write a book too.
Quickly, President Trump believes this unfortunate incident could serve as an opportunity for peace. The president also spoke to the Emir and Prime Minister of Qatar and thanked them for their support and friendship to our country. He assured them that such a thing will not happen again on their soil.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone should listen to those types of promises. Now I want to show you what Benjamin Netanyahu said, because like I said, they can't even get their story straight. He says, today's action against the top terrorist chieftains of Hamas was wholly independent Israeli operation. Israel initiated it, Israel conducted it, and Israel takes full responsibility. Now, isn't this the opposite of what she just told you? When she just explained to you that the president contacted Qatar to let them know of the impending attack and gave the green light for the operation to happen? They're all over the place. They can't even get on the same damn page, and they think that we just, for whatever reason, don't have eyes and ears. And then what was really interesting, when you look at the reactions, like Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, right? Listen to what he says. Now, he claims not to know. Listen to this.
Second question for anyone. As we were all driving in, walking in here, Israel struck Qatar to take out Hamas leadership. I'm curious if any of you think that whoever survives there should be evicted from Qatar.
I don't know anything about that development. That's news to me. I've been a little busy the last couple hours, but we'll have to see how that plays out. I mean, I was in Israel myself a few weeks ago in early August. It's a very dangerous time there, and they have enemies encamped around them, and they're trying to bring that to a peace as well. But Hamas, by anybody who looks at this reasonably, and in my view, this is my personal view, that Hamas has to be eradicated. You've got to remove that threat on the immediate border, frankly, within the bounds of Israel.
Second question.
So he doesn't know what happened. He had just heard about it during this apparent press conference here, but he's already talking about what needs to happen. I also find it interesting. He doesn't know about it. I knew about it. You're in DC. You don't know about it? Come on, man. Come on, man. Another one here that I think we need to dive into. What is the relationship between the United States and Qatar? Because I found something very interesting. When you look back at the way that Qatar received its independence and what happened that following year. So check this out. I don't know if you guys know a lot about Qatar. Guns, oil, and education. Qatar's evolving relationship in the United States, or with the United States. Check this out. Let me make it a little bit bigger for the people in the back. The state of Qatar declared independence from Great Britain September 3rd, 1971. And the U.S. recognized it 2 days later, establishing diplomatic relations in March of 1972. Peep this, fam. See if we can highlight this here. The American embassy in Doha was launched the following year, and the first resident U.S. ambassador to Qatar presented his credentials in 1974. So, long story short, Qatar received its independence in 1971. And the next year, the U.S. government already installed an American embassy in Qatar. So Qatar has been a puppet of the U.S. since 1972. Just another one. Natalie says it's an American vassal. There you go. AJ says sounds like a puppet government. Mm-hmm. Look how quickly they implemented that American embassy in Qatar. Didn't take them long, did it? And there's more, because I like getting into all of this. Let me pull this back up here. The relationship has developed over decades, especially in the defense sector. Qatar hosts U.S. Central Command Forward Headquarters and has supported North Atlantic Treaty Organization and U.S. military operations in the Arabian Peninsula area. Bilateral relations are strengthened by person-to-person exchanges and economic interests. Hundreds of Qataris come to the U.S. for university study, and 6 U.S. universities have branch campuses in Doha: Texas A&M, Cornell, Georgetown, Carnegie Mellon, Virginia Commonwealth, and Northwestern. So you guys see, this is a business relationship here. On the economic side, the U.S. is Qatar's largest foreign investor and source of imports. 120 U.S. companies have offices in Qatar, particularly in the oil, gas, and petrochemical sectors. So Qatar is just an extension of the U.S. This is how we really got to look at it. I say the same thing about Israel. I told you Israel is just basically a U.S. military base. So now that I told you that, would you really believe that Qatar was not in on this? They knew. When we talk about that largest military base in Qatar, here it is right here. Al Udeid, I hope that's the way you pronounce it, Al Udeid Air Base. It is the largest military installation in the Middle East. The largest. So they know what's up. They've been in on the game, guys. They've been in on it. And look at this. Let me just make this a little bit larger here, because we don't really talk about Qatar that much, I feel like. But it is situated west of Doha, that military air facility, situated west of Doha. In addition to Qatari Air Force, the base is home to numerous military assets and coalition forces. The base is important for deepening cooperation with U.S. military forces. So that's all this is. That's all this is. And that's why, and I just want to say something here before we come back to that other part. This is why when people make the argument, why aren't the other Arab countries coming to the Palestinians' defense? Why aren't they pushing back against Israel? Because they're puppets of the West. That's the same thing for Jordan. That's the same thing for Turkey. Turkey be all over the place sometimes. That's the same thing for the UAE. Saudi Arabia, they sometimes they friends with the US, sometimes they dipping their toe into bricks. Saudi Arabia just looks out for its own interests, basically. They ain't trying to come save nobody else. They may not like to hear that, but that's the reality. Puppets. That's what they are. And that's why and that's the big problem. And that's why the Palestinians, for the most part, with the exception of Iran and Yemen, that's why they're on their own. Another part I wanted to add here. Let me see. This part. Without entering into a contract at the time, Qatar gave the U.S. access to the Al Udeid base in 2000. After the Americans took over as base managers in 2001, Doha and Washington inked an agreement in December of 2002 that officially recognized the U.S. military's presence at the Al Udeid facility. So this has been a thing. And, people don't like to hear this, but I have to show you this and I have to tell you this so that you can understand why they are not trying to help the Palestinian people. And also, regardless of what they say in interviews, you need to keep this in mind as well. They are puppets of the West. Now, this brings up a question too about Al Jazeera. And I'm going to check this tomorrow. How is Al Jazeera going to cover this story? Because Al Jazeera is basically a Qatar outlet as well. Are they going to tell you what I just told you about how Israel, the US government, and Qatar were all in on this together? And this was a setup and this was a trap? We'll have to wait and see. Al Jazeera can be good on some things, but also, I hate to say it, but they puppets of the West too. So once we start to see all of these things and we see the connections, then we understand why things are happening the way that they are. Everybody plays the fool sometimes, but hopefully we can wake people up a little bit over here. I'm pretty sure the gray zone is probably going to have a lot to say about this. They'll probably be able to tell you even more than me because they've been, to the Middle East. So if they didn't put out, I don't think they put out a show today. If they didn't put out a show today, they probably will on Wednesday or Thursday, I would imagine. And they'll probably be able to go even deeper than this. So stay tuned. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.